I squeeze my eyes shut.
I turn up the music.
I step on the gas.
And I step on the gas.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough, and when we do talk about it, many of us, including me, we're not very good at it. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations, and hopefully better conversations with attempt survivors, in large part to help more people in more places hopefully feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you're a suicide attempt survivor and you'd like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com, on Facebook or Twitter/X @suicidenoted. And a friendly reminder, you can check the show notes to learn more about this podcast, including our membership. And of course, we talk about suicide on this podcast, and I unapologetically don't hold back, but please take that into account before you listen or as you listen. But I do hope you listen because there is so much to learn. Today is a different kind of episode. It's a special episode, something I'm experimenting with. Many of you know that I have been involved in the personal narrative storytelling world or scene for quite a long time. I had an event back in 2022 in which I invited suicide attempt survivors to share personal narrative stories, a crafted story, the kind of story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. We had 4 stories by 5 storytellers. That'll make sense a little later. 4 of the 5 storytellers were actually guests on this podcast, 2020, 2021. And so that is what you will hear today. Stories, and in between the stories, a brief conversation not only with me, but the storytellers for this event answered some questions from an audience. This was on Zoom, so you'll hear that as well. So stories and some conversation. 2 things I like more than just about anything else. Our first story is from Erica, and Erica lives in California.
I take a fistful of tranquilizers and wash them down with a bottle of fine red wine. I find myself in an exquisite moment. I'm floating, weightless, on my back in the salt water. In the brilliant sunlight, I'm inundated with nothingness, a respite from my anxious condition, complete quietude of thought. Let it last. Please let it be more than a short plateau out of chaos. No whys or what ifs or self-doubts. The conjuring of a wonderland. The blue sky is clear like the current state of my mind. The brilliant sunlight vanishes as reality jolts me back into consciousness. I've been staying with a friend since childhood, and she has a good heart. She's happily married, a public service lawyer in Los Angeles. She's taken pity on me. I'm heartbroken from a bad breakup. I'm an unemployed singer in a defunct rock band. My friend arrives home and finds me in and out of consciousness, and I'm sobbing. I want to die. Please, just let me die. While we're waiting to be seen at the UCLA emergency room, I beg my friend for the tranquilizers. She's put the bottle in her purse to show the doctor. Of course, she refuses. I jump at her and grab her purse and pull out the bottle, pop it open, and the pills fly everywhere. I'm yelling at the orderly guy that he is a fascist for not letting me smoke a cigarette. He rebukes my behavior, and I get a taste of what my future may be, depending on what the doctor decides. I don't think I really want to die, as much as just sleep for a long enough time so that when I wake, my shattered life will be back together again. I am committed to the UCLA mental ward, my condition deemed acute, a danger to myself. I'm put on the side of the ward for the extremely ill. I spend 2 weeks there, and after I moved to a recovery home for people with mental illness. It's my night, my turn to meet with the recovery home psychiatrist. I know exactly what I'm going to do to get out of there as soon as possible. I finally understand what the orderly on the ward meant when he said I had to start playing the sanity game, keep agreeing with everything they say, especially when they say that I have bipolar disorder. The doctor is waiting. I enter a small, cozy office with an overstuffed couch for me to sit on. He sits across from me in a chair. He's young, maybe 32, and he has a warm, paternal maturity about him that makes me feel like he's older. He's nurturing, relaxed, well, professional. He explains, take a step away from what you believe to be true. Question, is this real? Bipolar depression is a powerful force, but with the medications and with reality checks, it is manageable. I want to believe him. Dr. K continues, it may be a lifelong challenge to remain. He pauses thoughtfully. I interject, sane. He laughs. He's honest. I like that. He says, well, yes, but I was going to say, stay stable. What does stable even look like? I wonder. I'm like a spinning top that never stops. My life is a blur of misinterpretations, missteps, and tragically incorrect calculations. And I've destroyed my life. Mental illness means I'm entirely defective. I burst into tears. Handing me a box of tissues, Dr. K says, I believe in you. He looks at me with what seems like true compassion and understanding. My session is over. I thank Dr. K. It's the first time since this nightmare began that I feel respite from my condition, complete quietude of thought, no whys or what ifs or self-doubts. My mind is clear.
Thanks, Erica. May I ask a question?
Sure.
Because I imagine after you tell a story like that, it's a little bit like, whoa. I got a good sense of why that doctor was a little different. Perhaps this is an obvious question. It sounds like you've had your fair share of doctors in the mental health space who were not like him.
Yes, that's true. I was very lucky. It just turned out it was really wild. He was on my treating team at UCLA. And when I first met him, he said, I don't think you remember me because I was quite out of it. And he knew my case and we really connected. And then he continued to treat me pretty much for like 15 years on and off, depending on mostly steadily. And then I switched health insurance because of my job, whatever. And then I saw a new psychiatrist that was the exact opposite. And it was really unfortunate. I find that it's harder to find someone to connect with. Much easier to find people who suck than the good ones.
That goes beyond the mental health space, but yeah, for sure. I know for me, and I'm not going to talk much about me, but yeah, I have, you've heard a story and some others here have heard a story I share where, I was in the mental health system, the psych unit for a week or so, and it was really, really hard, but there was one particular person who made a huge difference. And it wasn't a particularly exceptional. I mean, it was exceptional, but if you were just looking at it, you'd say it was rather mundane what he did, but it was very powerful after being treated a certain way for a couple of days. So,
Sean, there's some really amazing questions in the chat right now. I see, what does stable even look like? When meeting with Dr. K, does your perspective on that question differ now from when you initially had that conversation? I think that I've come to understand my form of stability, the things that I really have to watch out for. What was really important to me then, which is still really important to me now, is that I had a full artistic life. I had been an actress and a writer, and I sang in a band, and I was always very artsy. And at that time, I felt like I lost everything and I was never going to find the stability to live that artistic life that was so important to me. And so I feel like my perception of stability, it was hard for me to look at myself as not stable, but my perception of stability now is that I'm doing the best that I can. And some days are better than others. And when I'm feeling destabilized, I'm super grateful for my friends, because that's who's my support system, and for things like this. Okay, so someone asked me, what, if any, advice would you give to someone else struggling with this diagnosis so that they could power through the pain? I would say some people don't want medication, but for me, it was really integral. I know that without the medications to balance my imbalance of chemicals in my brain, I wouldn't be functioning at a high level. So my advice would be, if you're going to go the route of medication, to try as much as possible, because it's really hard and so much trial and error, side effects. You know, I once heard someone say that psych meds can be like opening up the hood of a car and pouring oil all over, hoping it seeps into the right place. But I know people who found stability on medications. Okay, so someone asked me, do I ever regret still being alive?
Ooh, that's a Sean type question right there.
No, I am very grateful that I'm still alive, because I think about how sad the people who love me would have felt, and how profoundly grateful, because that sometimes it's so dark that doesn't even bring people back. There are times I have like extreme anxiety, like it gets so bad, and that I try not to medicate with anything addictive. I think, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like it's like I just want the stress and the anxiety to stop, and it feels like in that moment that it's going to kill me. Like I feel like it's going to kill me, but I get out of it with like the coping skills that I practice. And I am grateful that I'm getting to do this and have wonderful friendships. And I have a beautiful niece and nephew. My birthday is coming up, and it's hard because it's an older one. Like a fun red wine. Yeah. So have you ever dealt with a lengthy depressive episode? If so, how long, and what helps you get out of it? Yeah, I was super depressed for years. And the true thing that helped me get out of it was I started volunteering at an organization for kids in underserved neighborhoods to help with their homework and reading and writing. What does sane look like? Great line. And the honesty of the doctor. Glad that you met that one. Yes. Sane looks like I'm able to get out of bed and that I'm not pushing a shopping cart.
Yes.
Sorry, it's not funny. I did that. What would you say was the biggest challenge in relating this story to people like us who you don't know? Well, when I first started telling my mental health story like 7 years ago, it was terrifying. And I thought, I don't think I should reveal this. Like, it's not a good thing to tell people that you're crazy. No one's going to trust you. People are going to stay away from you. People are going to be suspicious of you. And then I just decided that I had to tell it, because for my own well-being, I knew it would be cathartic. I felt like it could maybe help people. And so I just did it. I just decided there was going to be more positive than negatives. And even if there were negatives, even if it was a small light of hope that I felt by telling them, that it was worth it.
Good. Thanks again, Erica.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Our next storyteller is Jamie, who resides in a place I know quite well, New York City. Take it away, Jamie.
In the last months of my drinking in 2006, I was obsessed with drinking. I was also obsessed with suicide. Now, at that point, I was not just an everyday drinker, I was an every waking hour drinker. Suicide was the last thought when I passed out at night and the first when I came to in the morning. But I didn't have the guts to do it. I kept hoping for divine defenestration, some magical force to pull me out of bed and toss me out my bedroom window to the street 10 floors below. Or maybe I would make it look like an accident, the old step in front of the bus routine. But then I would think about my partner, Michael, and my parents. And I thought, I can't do that to them. To myself, yes, but not to them. And I had a friend, Paul, who had killed himself a few years before. But before that happened, he had gone MIA for a while. He lived in Los Angeles. I live in New York. So we didn't see each other that much. And then he resurfaced and he was in New York. And we went out to lunch, and over several Bloody Marys, he told me that he had tried to kill himself. And I said, why, Paul? You have so much going for you. You're a great writer and you're smart and you're witty and so many people love you. He said, I just felt like I was done. And when he said that last done, it was like a dead pigeon fell on the table. And I still couldn't understand it. And then later that year, he tried again and he succeeded. And I was so mad. And I thought, how could anyone get to that point? So I always joke that I was a functioning alcoholic. And as long as the word functioning was in front of alcoholic, I was fine. I was a life of the party kind of drinker. But at this point in 2006, I was no longer drinking at any parties. I had been thrown out of, I don't know how many bars, at least 2 that I remember. I had been fired from one job. And I was close to being fired from the new job that I was in. I don't think functioning was a part of the equation anymore. On this particular morning in 2006, I overslept and I emailed my boss a lame excuse. And when I came to, there was an email from her and she just wrote, again, question mark, question mark, question mark. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. And I started walking around my apartment in circles. And then I looked in the mirror and I saw a ghost of myself. Or was it the picture of Dorian Gray? I was bloated, splotchy skin, bloodshot eyes. And I said, nose to nose with my reflection in the mirror, I'm done. I understood how Paul felt. I got it. I didn't blame him anymore. And then I grabbed a bottle of sleeping pills. I didn't think about my partner, Michael. I didn't think about my parents. I didn't think, period. I was operating on vodka and a mountain of self-loathing. And I poured a vodka on the rocks and I went into my bedroom and I closed the blinds to block out the bright morning sun. And there in the dark of day, I emptied those pills into my mouth. I washed them down with that glass of vodka and I climbed into bed and I pulled the covers around me as the sounds of traffic and life 10 floors below drifted away. Well, when I came to, I was in the detox ward of a hospital and Michael, my partner, had found me. I was glad I was alive, I think. And then over the next week, I just shuffled around those halls in paper slippers in a fog. And I thought, okay, I'm glad it didn't take, but I still felt done. My fantasy of what my life would be next was I was hoping that maybe they would put me away in a nice sanitarium, like one of those sanitariums in old movies. And I would just live out the rest of my days there. I was 38 years old, by the way. And, occasionally a handsome nurse in crisp white linens would come into my room and gently seat me in a wheelchair and wheel me down a gently sloping verdant lawn where I would greet the occasional visitors. And that would be it. Well, that's not what happened. After that weekend detox, I went away to rehab for 60 days. And slowly I started to get sober. And it took me about 2 years of starts and stops before I finally got the alcohol and the drugs out of my system. And once the alcohol was out of my system, the depression and the suicidal ideation was out of my system. And I started to rebuild a new life for myself. I felt like, I don't know, there was something gnawing at me. I felt like a new house that was built on an old foundation still riddled with termites. The suicide attempt that I told you about wasn't my first. I had tried it one other time, 11 years prior, when I was 27 years old. I don't remember much about that attempt because every time the memory of it would come up, I would just obliterate it, like, those annoying Facebook reminders. But I can tell you this. I was a book publicist and I had organized a very glamorous chic book party, and the star wattage was blinding. And rather than feeling proud of what, I had accomplished in organizing that party and pulling it off and being happy that I was around all those people, I felt like a nothing. I felt like the hired help. And I felt like because I wasn't pursuing my artistic ambitions, I would never be anywhere near as accomplished as those people there. And I got drunk at the party and I went home and I drank more. And then I remembered I had some painkillers left over from a sprained ankle, which I had got because of a drunken fall. And I took them and I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I was stunned that I had done that. But I was relieved that nobody knew. I wasn't caught. And I went to work and I didn't tell a living soul. I didn't tell my partner, Michael, and I didn't tell anyone over the ensuing years. And maybe if I told someone, I might have gotten help with my drinking sooner and maybe have not tried it that second time when I came closer. So why tell that story now? Now that I have several years sober, I have a whole new life, writing, I have my business, I'm performing. I'll tell you why. I own that story, so it doesn't own me. And every time I tell that story, it's a promise to myself that I won't make the third time the charm.
Thank you, Jamie. So you said in your story, you've not drank again.
No, like I said, after that attempt, it got me into rehab, and then I started getting sober. It was 2 years later is when I've had my last drink. So 2008 was my last drink.
Simple-minded question, perhaps. Has that been hard?
It's not now, but yes, it was. Yeah. And it took me 2 years from that time. I mean, actually, I had tried to get sober a few years before that. So yes, the journey to getting sober was hard. Is it hard now? No. But I stay sober, which, and staying sober, by the way, is my suicide prevention plan. Okay. Because I know if I drink or drug, it will take me to that place again. Because I went to that, I almost went to that place when one of the relapses after rehab, like within one evening, I had gotten drunk and was thinking about killing myself. But I do it through 12-step, through meetings and through therapy.
And Jamie's got a couple of questions in the chat that he wants to respond to.
Have you ever felt like you've reached a point that you do feel like you can't do that to yourself, not just living for them, but also for your own sake? Or does that line still hold true for you? Oh, yeah, absolutely. These days, I don't want to do that to myself as well as not doing it to them, for sure. This also kind of ties in with being sober. For me, and for a lot of people I know, you can't get sober or stay sober until you want it for yourself. Maybe you can stay sober for somebody else or for a job or for your health or for your looks. But if you're not doing it ultimately for yourself and wanting it for yourself, you rarely are going to do that. But yes, I'm definitely staying alive for myself. I am at that point where it would be first, I couldn't do it to myself, and second, because of what it would do to my family and friends. Did you feel guilty when you woke up in the hospital to your partner? Was he angry with you? What was the first convo with him like? First of all, I felt awful because I was sick from the alcohol. So I felt physically awful and I felt ashamed and I didn't want anyone to know. I mean, like I knew my partner, of course, knew, but I didn't want my mother to know. And that's a whole other story, which I won't get into here. Yes, I did feel guilty. And was he angry with me? He was very loving and kind, and he just, was afraid, and was worried about me. And then he said, the other question is, what was the first convo with him, with Michael? Like, we really didn't talk about that until I was in rehab and he came for a visit, and I took him to one of my meetings with me, and he shared about it there, about him finding me and knowing and feeling that there's something wasn't right that day. And then he and I had a combo with my rehab counselor, and we talked about that. And I certainly felt guilty then, but he was just, talked about how terrified he was and upset, but there wasn't anger there. So
thanks again, Jamie. I really appreciate it. Our next storyteller is Anne, who lives in the Chicagoland area. Take it away, Anne.
I never truly wanted to die until that day. True, I'd scratched myself raw with a post of veneering. I had taken so many pills and been pumped full of charcoal again and again, made to retch in an ER in a suburban hospital with a platinum blonde resident hovering over me asking, "Are you done with this?" There's so much more. I had a devil darkness, acute depression so thick I didn't care about nada, coupled with a severe drinking problem. But that day was different. I had made a firm decision. Sitting in a cheerful yellow room with slogans on the wall, "Easy does it. Keep it simple," in a posh rehab with 200 thread count percale sheets, I decided to really kill myself. A plump nurse bearing a tray of asparagus soup and a veggie burger with Dijon mustard and pickles appeared at my door. "Knock, knock. Here's your dinner. Easy does it." I ate the burger. I made my bed. I put on red lipstick and a Rolling Stones t-shirt. And I pranced out of my room and knocked on another patient's door named Ruthie. "Ruthie, would you mind if I borrowed your blow dryer? Mine's on the fritz." "No prob, Ann." I took the blow dryer back to my room. It was maroon. Cute. I had taken a red bucket from the maintenance closet that morning. I had all my tools. I did not think of my parents or my siblings. I did not think that this would ruin the treatment center. Acute depression is that selfish. I didn't believe in going to heaven. I just knew the whole fucking thing would be over. I filled up the red bucket with water. I fired up the blow dryer like a turbo Mustang, and with one huge movement, I plunged the blow dryer into the bucket, like diving into a brackish pool of emptiness that was my sickness. There was another slogan across from me as I plunged the blow dryer. "Let go and let God." Little jolts of electricity started pinging into my hand. Ping, ping. I waited for the explosion. Nothing happened except the ping. Death wasn't there. "God damn it!" I yelled at the top of my lungs. Just then the lights blacked out. I was in sheer darkness. I could hear the other patients coming out of their rooms and swearing and saying, "What the hell's going on?" I sat there in the dark, consumed by anger. This was supposed to work. I heard it worked. This was supposed to be foolproof. Fuck. A bit of time passed where I lay in my bed, rigid with rage. There was a knock on my door. I fucking opened it. There was a bent-over maintenance man with a giant ring of keys and a name tag that said Dirk. "There's been a blackout on the unit. It appears it started in your room." "My room?" "Yes." Ruthie appeared behind the maintenance man. "Ann, mind if I have my blow dryer back?" "No prob." Now here's where I have a memory blank. I don't remember if Ruthie's blow dryer was ruined. I don't remember what I did with the bucket. I don't remember what the maintenance man did to get the lights back on. I do know for certain no one thought anything about a suicide attempt. I was soon herded into the common room with the other patients by some ecstatic, frosty blonde counselor who was probably yelling the slogan, "Easy does it." After that, I remained in my room as much as possible. The staff left me alone because I was always crying. I barely made it to the recovery meeting with goofy people spewing garbage while we were force-fed stale coffee. But I did take the medication they gave me. Reluctantly. I had, because I was hopeless. I don't remember how long it took, but one day the pills kicked in. To say it was dramatic is an understatement. It was like walking into a sunlit room. Nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I did not want to die. The death rattle was gone. I started to really participate in the program of recovery at the posh treatment center with 200 thread count percale sheets and exquisite veggie burgers. And I left that place and embraced life. I really did. And today I know that I never believed in God or going to heaven, but I know it was grace that saved me.
How you feeling?
Good.
Good. Is that your only attempt?
No, that was the most serious one, though. That was truly wanting to die. The other ones, I think, were truly asking for help.
Right.
But this was truly the final thing.
What is one myth around ideating or attempting or all things suicide, so to speak, that you think is total bullshit?
Okay, I said this in my performance, and it's one thing I wished I hadn't said. I think when you're that depressed, you're not selfish.
Okay.
I can't claim it as selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
The pain is so unbelievable. You do just want to end it for those who take it seriously, that it's not a cry for help. I judge that I put that in there precisely because I don't think it's selfishness, really.
You wish you hadn't put it in this story?
Maybe it isn't selfishness. And I'd like to hear from other people who've done that.
I will tell you that of all the myths that I've heard, and that's how I tend to frame it on the podcast, and we've had probably, about 140 conversations now. That's by far number one.
I mean, people are mad.
Yes.
Commit suicide. They're mad. They turn to themselves, and say selfishness, or they say, what could we have looked for that this was going to happen? So there's extreme sadness and complete anger.
It tends to be extremes, right?
I think that.
And Dan, share with us the comment that one of our guests made in the chat.
I love the way you painted a picture of the place you were in with the side-by-side of the counselors' tones and phrases and slogans, paired with your inner monologue thoughts. Thank you.
I concur. Thank you again, Vandy. I always love your stories, particularly on this topic. Our final story is by two storytellers. It's a braided story. Chandra, who lives in Massachusetts, and JC, who lives out in California. Take it away, ladies.
I'm brushing, like always, to make daycare. Beyond this lies a deep, dark abyss of sleep-deprived new parenthood. Today was awful, but so was yesterday and the day before. It feels endless, it feels bottomless, and it feels hopeless. But I start my car and I gun the engine, trying to beat time, while knowing full well that I'm the one that's beaten. I peel out of the parking lot and I hang a left, mainly from memory because my vision is blurry from tears.
I drop off my project to the client with no time to spare. I am on my way from San Diego to Phoenix for Christmas. And when I get back in my car, as soon as my project leaves my hands, extreme relief sets in. And so does extreme exhaustion. But I'm determined not to let my terrible decision to procrastinate this work ruin my vacation. Every holiday that I spend with my grandparents could be my last, because they're both in their 80s. So I shake myself awake, turn the key, and start to drive.
I shake my head to snap out of it, and my eyes travel up to the traffic light just up ahead. It's green, so I accelerate, trying to make it through, but with just about a block left to go, it turns red. And that triggers this jumble of thoughts in my head. Questions. Is my husband in town? Yes, he's not traveling for work this week. Does daycare know his number so they can call him to pick up the baby? Yeah, they've got his number, they'll call him. Does anyone really need my broken, useless self around? No, they really don't.
I get on the 8 freeway. Ugh, great, there's holiday traffic. The last 6 weeks have been like one long downward spiral. My ex is dating 2 of my friends. And my doctor tells me that I have to set a follow-up appointment. But how much is that going to cost without insurance? I've been working 80-hour weeks now for how many weeks? When was the last time that I slept more than 3 hours or ate real food? I can't even think. I just feel doomed.
I'm almost at the light. I wonder if the chicken that I pulled out of the freezer that morning has thawed already. I'm going to try a new recipe for chicken marsala for dinner tonight. I think I might know how to debug that Python script at work and to finally make it run. It's going to make a really big difference. Today is the day that I'm supposed to be gluing little rhinestones onto the toy car that I'm crafting for my little son. And he's going to be really excited when I give it to him.
Up ahead are the rocky cliffs, and I see a sign warning of high winds. I start to nod off on the freeway, but jerk myself awake. Instinctively, I check the rearview mirror, and I see all the loose Christmas presents in my back seat. The hardback Hillary Clinton book I got for my mom, the overpriced Cutco knife set for my sister and brother-in-law, my new boots. This year, even more than usual, I stressed out trying to find time for gifts. Oh, which I did not even wrap. I will have to do that at my mom and dad's. Will Grandpa be lucid this time? And what about Grandma? I haven't seen her since she started getting dementia.
My eyes catch on the dashboard, and all I can think is how badly it needs to be dusted. My nostrils flood with the acrid odor of stale coffee. The traffic light ahead is still red.
My head snaps up, and I realize I fell asleep again. Instead of pulling over, I chug some more coffee. It doesn't help. I still feel very woozy, but I just don't care anymore.
I squeeze my eyes shut.
I turn up the music.
I step on the gas.
And I step on the gas.
It's two stories and it's one story, and there's no need to label it anything other than that. How does that feel to tell that? Because I know, if I can share, that you haven't, well, you've told those a version of that in individual stories before, but I don't think it's something that you've done a lot. I don't think a lot of the world knows. Am I right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Does that feel weird or?
I feel good. Something that we had talked about was just that we have shared our stories. Each of us have shared that story before, and doing it in this format was very different and very zoomed into a very specific moment of our stories.
It's been really interesting for both of us to work together on this. And Sean and Joanne, who was helping us achieve this incredible, new to both of us style of storytelling, it was so revealing because they asked us a really interesting question. They asked us, what's at the heart of your story? And it was so bizarre that both of our stories were about the same specific thing, about how impulsive our decision was. So we had to develop this hyper focus on that part of the story. So those of you who've heard our full stories, this is just like maybe 1/10 of it. But for me, it was very liberating to just not talk about the before, not talk about the after, but just stay in those few seconds in which both of us made these crazy, crazy decisions. That is the core of what we want people to know about our experience.
You did that very well. Yeah, I think it's important. And it's one of my goals with this. I call it a project. I don't know if that's the right word. It's like there's different stories around suicide or suicide attempt. There's many stories. And I think it's interesting to explore them. And some of them that are the ones we tend to hear are equally valuable, but I think it's not the complete picture. So for me, the conversations and particularly these kinds of stories are what I like to use as the vehicle. So you only had that one moment, the attempt, that both for you took place in a car. In that time since, have you come close to stepping on the literal or proverbial gas since?
I'm sorry if this causes pain to any of my friends in the audience, but yeah, I have. I think it's so interesting. Sean shared the story that he did, that it is the space in between trying and not trying. But one of the things is, I think the most important thing that happened with this one attempt that I made, it showed me how impulsive it can be, how spur of the moment it can be. And even though I know that it could happen again, because how do I know? I hadn't planned that one. How do I know it won't happen again? But I do know that it's made me incredibly self-aware of it. And when I find myself crawling or rolling to the edge of that deep, dark abyss that I had described before, beyond which I now know I can do something really stupid in a fraction of a second, I will say I've caught myself because I'm hyper aware, because I know now I'm not looking for myself sobbing into my pillow and saying, oh my God, I can't take it anymore. Apparently, that's not the way it works in my head. Apparently, everything is fine and I'm making plans to cook a nice dinner and I decide to run the light. To the question that you were asked, Sean, I think it's less likely it's going to happen to me. I think possibility exists, but I'm so aware of it now. I really hope that I'm not going to come this close ever again. Who knows?
Who knows?
Jade?
Yes. No, I have not had any type of experience like this since then. This was a very powerful experience for me. And since then, I've developed a lot of tools and support system. And so I also think I'm hyper aware now. Like I don't push myself to the brink like that anymore. And yeah, my life feels very, very different from what it was then.
Sean, may I take a question that came before from Sharon?
Sure, of course.
For both of us. She said, so what happened in that moment? And I know that it was a really big challenge for us to write this story and take that few seconds and stretch it out. And you really guided us so well to say, let it hang there. And I'd like to speak to what happened to me. And I think that's the way we structured both of our stories, is that pain just gets really intense and hard to resist. But for me specifically, because we drew out those seconds, we gave you a peek into how it's all happening in a fraction of a second. But when you feel like it would be easier for darkness to roll down than to go on another minute feeling like this, I feel like we're hardwired to survive.
Yeah.
Our primal instincts are to live. And for me, I definitely know that anytime I take one point of view, I think about the opposing side. So in our stories, my head went through all these reasons why I should end my life. And right on the heels of it came everything that was going on in my life, right? That chicken marsala, how I was going to finally crack fix some code at work, my little son and the joys that I got from him. And so that's what happened in that moment, is the pros and the cons balanced, fought, warred against each other in our head. We all have these loud voices in our head, the devil and the angel sitting on either shoulder. And I think what happened for me in that moment is it wasn't enough. I guess that the pain was heavier, which is why I did what I did. And I'm ever so grateful that I came out of it okay. But I think that's what happened in the moment. And I think maybe that happens to most people, is in a fraction of a second, your brain works faster than you realize. What do you think, Jay?
I was asked what ended up happening. My experience was very reckless. Feel judged sometimes. I've had people tell me oh, that wasn't an attempt. Why would you be telling this story? I was tired and I was driving, but there was a lot more to it. And I think it's important, if someone identifies themselves as an attempt survivor, then just, go with that, believe them.
Sure. That's a better starting point.
I don't think it's very helpful to,
Right.
judge someone
Right.
for that. But in my story, I did end up I fell asleep and I did have a car crash, and it was very dramatic car crash, and I had a near-death experience. That is what helped me get to the point where I am today. It was, a literal near-death experience. Saw the light, very weird. Yeah, this was a really important experience in my life. And, it's unfortunate that I felt so hopeless and reckless at the time, but I would like to say that I would not make a decision like that in the future, and that my life was saved for a reason.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support, and special thanks to Erica, Jamie, Anne, Chandra, and JC. Thank you all very much for your stories on your attempts or near attempts. If you are a suicide attempt survivor and you would like to talk, please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com on Facebook or Twitter/X @suicidenoted. Of course, you can check the show notes to learn more about the podcast, including our membership and a bunch of other cool shit. And that is all for this special episode, number 225. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I will talk to you soon.